All right, welcome back. This is episode 4, New Year's Eve special.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about New Year's Eve, goals, what New Year's Eve looks like, and maybe what we're thinking about going into the new year.
Yeah. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah.
So we're about to have the new year. We're
Yeah.
about to enter into 2026.
Mm-hmm.
How do you begin thinking about, and do you
Mm-hmm.
think about the next year, make any plans, do any reflections? What does that process look like for Ryan Lucas?
Yeah, I'm not a huge New Year's resolution person or rewrite the whole book on New Year's Day because I tend to try to, I want to kind of stack gradually. But one of my friends, he started sort of thinking about the new year really around October, which I thought was really refreshing because I always was I get to this time of the year, I'm like, oh man, I got to think of these goals or think of what I want to do differently this next year. But really, once he kind of helped me reframe it and start thinking okay, around October, this year's kind of wrapping up. And now I can start to think what's coming up this next year. Still doesn't mean I did it great, but I try to start thinking about it earlier on. And one of the tools that another friend of ours recommended between Kate and I, he recommended thinking about it in terms of really simple. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And what do you need to just cut out of your life completely? So her and I will probably go through that little exercise in the next couple of weeks or so.
So what were those 3 things again?
So what do you need to do more? I guess not what do you want, but what do you need to do more of? What do you need to do less of? And what do you need to just probably take out of your life altogether?
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So, off the top of my head, I think something that we really want to do more of is more giving, especially financial giving with our church. We were doing a lot of that this year. We do a regular tithe, but I think, this year went really well for us. We're both in jobs that are not, exactly fixed income. And this year went really, really well for us. So we're thankful and we really enjoyed giving a lot this year. I don't know why, but more so than usual. And so I think that's something that I want to do more of this year. Less of is pretty much always the same answer for us. Less time on screens, more time outside. I think less of this year for me though, I was just reflecting on it this morning. I could use a little less caffeine in my life right now, right? I've gradually upped to 2 cups of coffee a day, which is a lot for me. And so I'd like to get back down to a cup of coffee being my regular thing and then maybe a tea or something like that.
So you said more giving.
Yes.
Less screen time.
Yes.
And
I'm going to switch that to less caffeine.
Less caffeine.
Less caffeine, yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah. Less screen time, I feel like is just an obvious. I think everyone could use that. For me specifically, I could probably use less caffeine. And then the takeaway, I'll have to think about that one yet because I don't know what we've got right now that we want to take away.
How do you differentiate between the less of something and takeaway? Is the takeaway it's a
takeaway is dude, you shouldn't even be you don't even need to be touching that. So that's a harder one for me because I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot right now. My wife and I both are in good spots. But takeaway would be we're, I don't know, eating this unhealthy thing. We just need to not even have it in the house or whatever. So we got a lot of that kind of thing dialed in for now, I think. Or we need to quit. I think it comes in on maybe a little bit more people who maybe I need to quit a group or a thing that's too much. If you're overbooked, I got to stop, my Monday night group or something like that. Yeah.
You're a very disciplined person. So I would imagine that, like you said, you've got a lot of things already locked down in terms of the things that you're doing, and you're very focused too.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. Not having a ton of things, you got to think a little bit more deeply on the takeaway.
Yeah.
Let me go back really quick and ask, for you, why do you think it is or is not important to have this period of time where you're setting New Year's resolutions or goals or reflecting back on the past year? You mentioned your friend does this every October, but I think a understandable question is why? Why not just continue to live life or just keep going, march into your own beat? Why do you think that this is important?
Yeah.
Or is not important to do?
That's a good question. the phrase that has been on my mind and heart a lot lately is the question, like, what's on the table? And like, when you have some time to reflect on what you've been doing, and maybe some time, I like to spend time around people who are further in life than me, or have maybe accomplished something that I think would be cool to accomplish. But when you expose yourself to anything, more people, a different place, different types of people, the question that has been coming to mind lately for me is like, okay, what's on the table? And a lot of it for me has been like, what's on the table with your faith? Like, if you understand what's on the table, and when I say that phrase, I mean like what's on the table isn't like what's possibly available. What's possibly available? What's on the table with my health? What's on the table with my faith? What's on the table with my family or my finances? Like, I think framing it up that way allows you to think a little bit bigger. And when you can think a little bit bigger about that, and you have some time and space to ask yourself those questions, then I think you can put some really cool, I wouldn't even say goals, but some really cool things in your environment. So like, I'll think of an example of that. Like for us, we were thinking of maybe back to the giving thing, like what's on the table for us in terms of faith. We were thinking about this a lot in the past year. I was really struggling with like stressing about money, overthinking things about money, really struggling with am I going to have enough money? Am I going to have enough money? Do I need to make more money? I need to make more money. That sort of like thought pattern. And then when we're asking ourselves like, okay, what's on the table for this? Like what's on the table if you're a believer and you understand, that verse in Matthew that talks about God provides for everyone, for everything, birds and plants and all that stuff. What's on the table is I never stress about money again in my entire life. And so having a time and space to reflect on what's on the table allowed us in the following season to go, okay, so I'm going to pray about the way we decided to approach it is towards the beginning of last year. I'm going to pray about this once and then it's done. I'm going to ask God, provide for us, provide enough money, and then it's done. And I think to come full circle on your question, the reason it's important to reflect and to look back is because you can ask yourself what's on the table and then you can actually go for it.
That's awesome. A couple of things to respond to there.
Yeah.
One, I love what you just said about that you can never worry or stress about money. But your answer to that, the antidote to your stress and worry about money is not just making more money. You're really saying, I want to have faithfulness in my money. And that antidote, which I think is so countercultural. Yeah. I listen to a lot of business YouTubers and money and finance guys, and it's always about, well, we obviously want to be good stewards of our money, but it's always steward this so that you don't have the pain of not having money. And then the other, that's a lot of the financial stewardship side and the money guys. And then you have this other side that is all about just go make more money, about how you got to make so much to have freedom. And, they'll hear these things about freedom funds and things like that. But really, that's all just about acquiring and having more and building your storehouses. And just like how the Bible talks about the rich young man who built his storehouse and said, now I don't have to worry because I'm set. And yet that night his life was demanded from him. And so you're saying that more so the antidote to that stress and worry about money is not to go and build that freedom fund, not to necessarily follow all the baby steps, which I think is still very good practical advice, but it's really to begin with a heart of faithfulness with money towards the Lord. And that can remove that stress component.
For sure. Yeah. And in the position that I'm in at work, I've got the privilege to work around a lot of people who've done really, really well for themselves in life. But it literally doesn't matter. There is literally always something more expensive. So that's like a bottomless pit. And the downside to that for me is I'm around a lot of nice stuff. I'm around a lot of really, really nice houses.
Because in your job, you get to work with a lot of very high, some of the highest net worth individuals, and you get to work on some of the most incredible custom homes in the world.
Yeah.
So you get to see just how amazing some of that stuff is, but also just how unfulfilling or how much of just a chasing after the wind that can be too.
Well, yeah, totally. Because we're like sitting across from somebody who's a centimillionaire or billionaire, and we're still like, well, this is kind of out of your budget for what you can still afford it, but this is more than you set aside for this house, which is millions of dollars. And it's like, yeah, I guess there really isn't, and there's no like magic number because it just doesn't exist. But what's on the table is you could live your life never having to worry about that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to that, what's on the table, you gave me a book recently called Decade by Decade by Bob Beal.
Yeah.
And he mentions in there about people are motivated by, or sort of engaged by one of three things. And you might be motivated or engaged, but you tend to heavily weight in one area, and it's either opportunities. You're motivated by opportunities, you're motivated by goals, or you're motivated by challenges and problems to be solved. Obviously, a lot of people would say a little bit of each, but you're going to have one that really stands out to you. It sounds like you would be really motivated by the way that you think about what's on the table, by opportunities for that. Do you think that you're motivated mostly by opportunities?
Actually, it's really funny. I forgot about that part of that book. So that author Bob Beal actually came and spoke at a group that I was a part of, and I remember like the way he put it too was like you're either he's like, if you think of football as the example for those, he's like, you're either offense, because these all if the way football works, there's all different teams, right? So you're either on offensive team, defensive team, or special teams. Special teams is like field goal kickers and stuff like that.
What does each one of those relate to in terms of opportunities, goals, and challenges?
So challenges is like defense. So you're like, okay, some people have that like defensive mind, and if they played sports, they probably ended up being better at defense or something like that. And then the goals is the offensive side, because they're like, what they can think about is like, I see where I want to go, and like it's the next first down or it's the end zone, and I figure out how to get there. And then I never, like when he described like special teams, I was like, this is such a bogus analogy, until he got to that part, and I was like, I don't know if I've ever been able to articulate that for myself before. But he was like, basically special teams is like, you see maybe things that are a little bit unique and you try to see them in a different way, and you're not necessarily motivated by some arbitrary goal until you realize that there's something different to be learned or achieved in that.
And that would be that opportunity.
That would be that opportunity. Yeah. And he's like, you might not always be super motivated until you see that thing that you realize is a unique opportunity. And I thought that was a really interesting way of framing it up. But I totally forgot that was in that book. But yeah, it's a cool framework for maybe understanding how you think about things.
And that definitely seems to be up your alley, because one of the things that people haven't recognized this about Ryan yet is that you are very good at taking perspective changes or shifting your paradigm to see things in a different light. And so that jives perfectly what you're saying about how that opportunity, because not everybody's going to see, they're going to see the table, and they might see it as full of goals or challenges, and they might even see it opportunities, but you're going to take such a different lens at how you approach them, the paradigm of how you think about that, and you're going to paradigm shift your reality to then see new opportunities. So that's really neat. What I know about you as a person, that totally just all lines up.
Yeah. Interesting. What else did you, I forgot that we wanted to talk about that book too. So the way the book is set up is actually as decades of your life. So you read one that's like, one chapter is 0 to 10, and the next one's 10 to 20, and the next one's 20 to 30, so on. And I think he gets all the way up to 70s. But it's not necessarily meant to be read chronologically. You can pick it up and just read your decade, or you could read the decade that your friend is in, or whatever you want to read. Did you read straight through, or did you read your decade?
I read straight through.
Okay, yeah.
And
It's not a long book, so
it's not a long book.
Yeah.
And tying it back to what we're doing, we talk about these yearly plans. That book was so helpful to think about what is my plan for the decade?
Yeah.
And not just having, I'm trying to think really far out or trying to go further, but really to just think about what is this long decade season of my life look like? What are some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish in a very large sense, not of, hey, I want to do these specific things, but really like, hey, this is what the big question that I'm trying to ask during this decade of my life. And this is what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of maybe just a overarching principle. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really helpful because sometimes I can get a little bit myopic when we think about planning to say, what does just the next year look like? And I'm much more motivated by challenges. And so I think about just what challenges am I facing right now? What do I need to go out and change and do? Yeah. And so having that book really helped me to have a different paradigm of thinking around a bigger picture around the decade and even beginning to think about the next decade.
What did you think about the decade that you're in? There's a question, basically the way the book is kind of set up is he kind of describes each decade as like, this is what you're probably thinking about in this decade. Did you resonate with what he said about the decade that you're in, about 30s?
I did. So he said the big question in your 30s is, am I successful? Mm-hmm. And definitely resonated with asking myself that question. It was helpful to kind of even think about, well, how do I define success? Yeah. What does that look like? And it caused me to be more introspective of asking myself, I didn't really realize I was asking that question in just a lot of other different ways and words.
Yeah.
And so by recognizing that, I recognized I was asking myself that question and then really kind of had to ask myself is that the right question that I should be asking? It is the question that I'm asking myself, that background noise, the background questions and thoughts. But I had to ask, is that really what I want to be asking myself out of this decade?
So what did you do with that? What was your process of reading it, thinking about the question? And then did you come to some kind of conclusion or some sort of different thought pattern about it?
I'll let you know when I get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of book to process. Really like it's like that thick, but there's a lot in there and he does a good job of like, I think he's just talked to so many people that he does a good job of understanding this is what a person in their 30s is probably thinking. This is what a person in their 40s is probably thinking, and like what they're probably wrestling with the whole time. So I thought it's a really fun read.
So if you missed that, it's Decade by Decade by Bob Beal, and I believe his last name is spelled Biehl, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, really good book, and he's got a whole collection of books. But going back to New Year's resolutions and thinking about the year, is there anything else that you're thinking about for this next year that you're wanting to change, or even just kind of the way that you process through the new year?
Mm-hmm. It's a small thing, but one of the things that we're working on, Kate and I, is it gets dark here a little bit earlier right now. And we're, expecting our son soon. He's due April 27th. And we know we'll have a lot of time inside. We're probably going to be tired, and or it's going to be dark, and or we'll need to be watching an infant at the time. So we're really trying to think of like things this next year that we can do inside that's not on a screen. So like she's got something she's probably going to get soon is like a sort of like a knitting thing, but it's like with your hands, so you can knit, I don't know, scarves or whatever you want, blankets, but it's just like instead of knitting needles, you're like using your fingers. So we're trying to find things like that, open to suggestions if anyone has a comment, that are like things you could do inside, relatively sedentary, that are like mentally engaging, but you could still do it if you're tired after work. So we're looking for things like that. That's probably the only other thing that I would really like to change. We tend to like, go to like put something on TV or something like that if we're really tired, but
yeah, you mentioned something that's actually a very biblical principle. You're not necessarily doing it for a sin issue. I don't think it's a sin to watch the screen. Obviously, we're making it an idol out of that. But as you are looking to put off your screen time, you are working to put on this new activity or habit. Because if you just say, I'm just going to have the absence of screens,
right,
you can easily fill that with another unproductive or just quality sort of activity.
Yeah.
So you have that plan in place to say, as we minimize the screens, we're going to maximize this other type of activity. And I love the forethought to think about the time with just an infant where you're just going to want to be around them. But there's only so much an infant can do too.
Right.
And so just turning off the screens and having intentionality like that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. So what do you have for, how do you frame up, what do you think about and how do you frame up the coming year when you're around this season?
Yeah. So each year I take a little bit of a different approach and methodology to it, because as I learn and grow, I get a better framework and better understanding of how I operate and what works for me. So this year I've really focused on 6 areas and trying to define 6 areas and just stay consistent with that. Yeah. So those 6 areas are where I just kind of go through each domain, each area, and then ask myself some questions in it. So the areas that I go through are looking at faith, family, fellowship, or you could also say just friends. So faith, family, fellowship, finances, fitness, and fun. And so going through those, I asked myself this year, what areas did I do really well in, or how did I really excel in that area? For me, I'm a very critical thinker. And so it's very easy for me to be, to know, I know all my shortcomings and failures. It was really helpful for me to ask myself, what did I do really well in each of those areas? And to help affirm where did I do well and to make sure I understand what I wanted to continue doing and just the areas that I was proud of and that either were accomplished or where there was growth, and just acknowledging that growth, because sometimes I'll forget to look back and see where I've come from. I'm just constantly focused on that next challenge.
Looking back can be really very good way to go forward.
And I think it gives you a confidence to say, you know what, growth is very slow oftentimes. Yeah. Sometimes there's really focused times and you see a lot of growth, but we oftentimes, I like the expression, we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we underestimate what we can do in a year. And I think as I look back and I say, what did I do really well? How did I grow over this last year? It really helps me to see that, wow, by doing that one little thing, that thing that I set out to do at the beginning of the year, that maybe even partway through the year, I lost track of, and then I came back to, but wow, I can actually really clearly perceive a change in my maturity in that area over the last year. Or I can see how that thing led into a lot of benefits. So doing sort of a positive reflection that way has been really helpful for me. Because I think in past years, I've really just done a negative reflective of what were the challenges, what were the shortcomings, and how do I change?
Yeah.
So
all you do in that headspace too is all you do is realize what didn't work with no tools to do what did work. But when you look back on when you reflect positively and you're how far I've come in whatever area, you're oh wow, instantly your mind goes I didn't even expect this, but this area, this thing that I did improved, your quote unquote, your fellowship category by so much, it's weird because you spend so much time, I can do the same thing. You spend so much time being critical and then you don't realize actually there were all these things that I did right that I would have just stopped doing if I was only thinking about what I did wrong,
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll ask myself, what did I do well or what went well in that area? And then I'll ask myself, where did I fall short? So I will go back through and say, where did I fall short, or where would I have liked to do more, just do differently? And then I'll look at, okay, what do I want to change or grow, or where do I want to grow? And so some of that is saying, I want to, almost what you're saying, I want to stop doing this, I want to start doing that, or I want to continue doing this thing, kind of a start, stop, continue methodology. And then really this year, I tried to, as life just gets busier and more complicated, is saying, okay, in each one of those 6 domains, I want to choose 3 things to just be intentional about over this next year. Some of them are really big, large initiatives, and some of them are just very small and simple. But I think having 3 in each of those 6 is something that I can get my mind around. And if I'm consistently sort of coming back to that, I'm able to refresh and just see how am I making progress in those areas. And then finally just documenting all that down. So it's not just in my head, but I can go back next year and look at the journal and the thoughts that I was having. Now with AI, I can even throw that in there and have it help analyze. If I journal out in the end of next year and say, hey, this is kind of where I went. This is how these things progressed. It can help see and help me, just analyze some of that.
So if you have your 6 categories and 3 initiatives in each category, you have 18 items. What's the easiest thing on the list and what's the hardest thing on the list?
Well, let's see, because I have my list here in front of me, so I'll kind of read some of these things. So Probably the easiest thing on the list would be to spend more. Nope. I'm trying to think. Probably the easiest thing to do on the list is have more. So this is my fun category, is have more consistency of joy. So one of the things that I did this last year, and we kind of talked about this with the types of fun and doing type 3 fun, of really turning things that should be fun, but that we sometimes get distracted by, or that we feel like, man, that we kind of turn it into a task, and turning that into something fun, or just remembering that this is fun. I really try to be intentional this last year about taking joy. So whether it's just, I think I used an example one time of taking the girls down to the beach, and sometimes it could be, it's cold, it's wet, it's windy. And I just really try to block all that out and just say, you know what? Hey, I'm really thankful that I'm just down here at the beach with my girls. We're playing in the water, and I'm even going to go jump in and get all wet and sandy and whatnot. I'm going to be uncomfortable for the next couple hours as I'm drying off. But I'm going to do that because it's going to just have this family joy that we're going to get to have. And so I really try to be intentional about that, even when things didn't go well. Or something happened, like a flight that I wanted to do didn't happen, or that we had to change the itinerary or something. It's just, I'm just going to take joy in this. And so I think that's going to be one of the easiest things to continue, because it's a self-rewarding activity. Yeah. You just change that paradigm, to change your perspective, and take that joy, and just recognize that I'm so grateful for everything in my life, and just that I really don't have anything to complain about. We talked about several episodes ago about that clicker. When you just think about all the things you have to be grateful for, and we should just be mashing that clicker all the time. So really being consistent in the joy.
You could have said that was your hardest one, and I would have believed you too. Because I find tremendous challenge in taking joy with it. Sounds really easy, but especially when the thing goes sideways, it's really hard to find that joy. But I'm glad you find it easy.
Well, I think it's because it definitely was not easier.
It's easier said than done, for sure.
It was definitely not easy when I was starting to do that last year and be more intentional about it. But it's definitely gotten easier as things have gone through. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I'd say one of the hardest ones, I think, for me is going to be one of my goals in faith is to have a stronger prayer life, and to just spend more time praying. And I'd say that I think that's going to be one of the harder ones, just because I know that there's sometimes that resistance, especially to do long form prayer, can oftentimes get put on the back burner. And for me, that's an area where I really have to be diligent and consistent in making that dedicated and focused time. And especially in just the busyness of life, it's just such an easy thing to cut, or to think that I'll get to that later on in the day. Yeah. And so while I don't like to say that that's going to be one of the hardest things, I think it just naturally will be a hard thing. It's almost like going to the gym. It's like, hey, it's really great when you're there, but to muster up that effort to muster up the effort to get beyond just, the simple, morning devotional prayer, but to really spend more time and long form prayer before the Lord. I think that's going to be, I just know it's going to be, the spirit's going to be willing, the flesh is going to be weak. Yeah. And so I anticipate that one being challenging. Luckily, I can pray through that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What do you think helps that habit? Like, to me, the hardest thing, if you're praying, is like getting distracted. So I've found that it's easier for me to write down prayers. Do you have, I don't want to say a hack, because that sounds weird to say that you're going to hack your prayer, but do you have like a tool or something that you feel makes that easier?
One of the things I think is really helpful when people talk about, I'm too tired to pray, or I'm too busy to pray, or I might get distracted, is I always tell them, this is in our discipleship groups and our training of leaders, is just pray through those things. So if you're coming to your prayer time and you say, man, God, my mind is just racing so fast, and I'm so distracted, you just bring that before the Lord. You just pray, God, I'm really distracted right now. Yeah. And I don't think that I can focus on you. And I know that I'm not bringing you the attention that you deserve. But Lord, I'm here. Please quiet my mind. Please help me to pray to you. And maybe that entire prayer time just looks like just the repetition of that. And you do get distracted. And then you say, like, Lord, I was just distracted. Please forgive me. Please, Lord, create in me a desire, and create in me the attention that you deserve. And so you just go back, and same thing with tiredness. Lord, I'm just tired. I didn't come to prayer and just said, Lord, I don't want to pray right now. I don't feel like this. This is the last thing that I want to be doing right now. And I just confess that to him and ask him to give me a heart for prayer. And so it's just being completely honest and open and authentic before the Lord. So we can't be authentic and honest and open before him. Like who else can be? And recognizing that he loves you and cares for you and desires that communion with you. And so when we can bring that, now we don't stay in that place and come to him bemoaning that, but to just be honest, Lord, this is what I'm feeling. And then asking him to change our hearts for that.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah. That's a good tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked about some of the ways that we think about the new year and the planning for New Year's resolutions. You talked about how you look at what you can refresh my memory here.
More of, less of, get rid of altogether.
More of, less of, get rid of. I talked about how I go through 6 domains: faith, family, friends, finances, fitness, and fun.
Yep.
And ask myself, what did I do well in? Where did I do well? Where did I fall short? And where do I want to grow over the next year?
Yeah.
So that's how we take our approach to 2026 coming up here and thinking through those. If you guys have different thoughts or methodologies or frameworks that you work through or that you think about, let us know in the comments. And then also too, let us know if you have any resolutions or goals that you want to put out there. Put them down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you and find out what's going on. And honestly, steal your homework and get some great ideas of things to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Here's to a great year ahead and Happy New Year's.